Hello there, friends. Welcome back. I've got some supplies set out here to do some measuring and cutting of some construction paper. But we're not doing this at random. We have an ulterior motive for setting up this little craft project, and it has to do with the dining room project that you've probably been hearing about on my stream or in the Tracing the Hardwood video. We ripped out all the carpet in that room, and now we need to put an area rug in on top of the hardwood so that we can set the dining room back up. And so the question becomes, what is the proper size of area rug to put in the room? There's a lot of different guidance on how to size an area rug properly. A lot of different guidance. Some say that if you're doing a full room area rug, you want to leave 2 feet of hardwood floor exposed around the perimeter. When you're dealing with a dining room, they say you really want to go out 36 inches from all sides of the dining room table so that when the chairs are pushed back, all of the legs of the chairs will still be on the area rug, which makes sense. After we exposed all this hardwood, we don't want to scuff it up further by dragging chair legs across it. But I'm a very visual guy, and when we were considering sizes and going to the store and looking at what was available, I realized that I just couldn't visualize very well how much space in the room the various standard area rug sizes would take up. And that is a perfect reason to use paper to model the spatial relationships of the rugs and the room. I learn so much more from a short exercise like this when I'm trying to make a decision like this. So I thought we would make a video of this process. We're going to cut out some rectangles. One of them will represent the room, and then we'll cut out 3 more that will represent some standard area rug sizes: 8 by 10, 9 by 12, 10 by 13, as an example. And we can use those to get a visual sense of how much space the rugs will take up. And hopefully it will help us decide what the right size should be. So, we'll just try to get started here, and I'll explain along the way some of the information that we have. But first, we can't resist some pencil sharpening sounds. No, I have not cleaned this out since the pencil rummage video. This one needs a lot of help, of course. We didn't sharpen this one in the previous video, so here we go. These are both Dixon Ticonderoga pencils of different colors. I really enjoy videos that show detailed pencil and paper or pen and paper work. I like watching artists sketch things, but technical drawing works for me too, where you're measuring and drawing straight lines. So we'll see if we can get a little of that vibe into our little project today. All right. Now, I have several pieces of construction paper here. We're going to cut a rectangle representing the room first, and I think, let's see what colors we have. I think I want high contrast. I want a light colored room so that when we put the rug colors on top, we'll be able to see the rugs very well. So I think yellow needs to be the room color. We'll set our extras off to the side. So we have a yellow piece of construction paper here. Now I have some data on this piece of paper. The room in question is nearly square, actually, which introduces a little bit of awkwardness considering the dining room table is a rectangle and a lot of your standard rectangular rugs. The room is 15 feet 3 inches by 14 feet 6 inches. Now we'd like to be able to measure and cut out this construction paper in the same ratios as the room so that it's proportionately correct. So we need a conversion factor or a scaling factor that we'll use for all of our measurements. Got a ruler here. It's got centimeters and millimeters on one side, and it's got inches on the other side. We're going to use millimeters today because that's a little more granular. Although this isn't really an exercise about precision. We're just trying to eyeball things here and make visual approximations, visual judgments of these comparative sizes, so it's not going to break our project if our measurements are just a little bit off. So we have this yellow construction paper, and let's see how wide it is. It's 22.9 centimeters wide. Let's see. So what I'd like to do is I'd like the short dimension of the construction paper to represent the long dimension of the nearly square room. So we need a way to convert our 15 feet 3 inches to 22.9 centimeters. 15.3 is 15.25 feet. So we can get a conversion very easily by taking our 22.9 divided by 15.25. This gives us 1.5016, which is close enough to 1.5 that we're just going to call it 1.5. So what does that mean to us? That means if we take our decimal feet, dimensions of the rooms and the rugs, and multiply them by 1.5, that will give us decimal centimeters that we can use to measure on the paper and cut out our shapes. So 1.5 is the magic number. So we already know that if we do this calculation on the 15.3, we get the 22.9, which is the width of the paper. So if we do it with our 14.6, which is 14.5, we get 21.75 or 21.8. So that gives us our first dimensions to work with to create the room. We know the room is going to be 22.9 centimeters this way and 21.8 centimeters this way. So that's the first one we have to measure. 21.8. Is here. 21.8 is right about there with a little mark. And the nice thing about working on a grid like this is that we can just line up our paper with one of these black grid lines. And we can put our little mark and line it up with one of the grid lines that's at a 90-degree angle. And we can transfer our mark to the other side without having to measure down the other edge of the paper. It's not exact, but it's plenty good enough for what we're doing here. So that means we have a line here. That we can now cut. Hold this so that the light doesn't cast a shadow over my line. That is an excellent cutting sound. Do you like these old metal scissors? I've had these a long time. They're some of my favorites. Okay. So that was pretty easy. Now we have a piece of paper that represents the dining room, and as you can see, it is very nearly square. Now I'd like to do something else on this piece of paper before we move on. remember I mentioned that one of the pieces of guidance that you hear sometimes is leaving a couple of feet of floor exposed around the edge. Now, I think the dining room guidance with the chair legs trumps that, but if you're going to put china cabinets and bookshelves along the walls, and you're playing around with rug sizes, you want to be sure that your rug isn't encroaching too far around the perimeter, because you're going to set things there. And for something like a china cabinet, you wouldn't want one set of legs on the rug and the other set on the floor. So what I'd like to do is mark a 2-foot line all the way around the 4 sides of this room so that we have a visual indicator of where that 2-foot space is. This will be a reference that we can use when we start putting our rug shapes in the room. So we know that our magic number is 1.5, right? So if we take 2 feet, that's easy. We knew that math, of course, but we like to push the buttons. 3 centimeters. So we're going to mark a 3 centimeter line all the way around this room before we move on to our rug shapes. So we'll just very quickly put a 3 mark. I said 3, yes? Yeah, 3 centimeters. That puts a mark right there. And we put a mark right here. And on the opposite wall, we'll put a mark here. We'll put a mark here. No problem. We'll use our grid again for a very quick. I need to write on the paper, not on the grid, not on the grid board. Transfer these marks like so, and then we'll do the same thing here. Transfer these marks like so. And like so. And I'll make this outline fairly light. Like that. Hopefully this shows up on the camera. Again, I just wanted a quick visual reference. I didn't need this to stand out too much, but this line represents 2 feet away from the walls. So we're going to use this as a reference later when we are looking at the rug and maybe playing around with an angled installation, which can be cool looking. We'll pay attention to how far the corners are encroaching into this 2-foot zone, okay? All right, so there's our room. put him over here. Now about rugs. The other piece of information that I have on this paper is about the table, the dining room table. Our dining room table measures 73 3/4 inches by 43 3/4 inches. So if you follow the 36-inch rule out from all sides, that gives us a dimension of 12 feet, 1 3/4 inches by 9 feet, 7 3/4 inches, which is very close to one of the standard rug sizes of 9 by 12. And we were in a store a couple of weeks ago looking at rugs, and we found one that we really liked the look of. And we were looking at the sizes that were available. And for this particular rug, the sizes jumped from 8 by 10 to 10 by 13. It skipped the 12 by 9 range. And 10 by 13 seemed so big. I wasn't comfortable just buying the 10 by 13, knowing that it would be plenty big enough for the table, but I was worried about how it would crowd the room. So even though 12 by 9 seems to be the right size, quote unquote, for the dining room table, we want to try multiple sizes with our little modeling exercise today, because maybe our favorite rug isn't available in a 9 by 12. We have to understand whether 10 by 13 is going to overwhelm the room or not. So with 3 more pieces of paper, we're going to do 3 rug sizes. We're going to do an 8 by 10, and then we'll do a 9 by 12, and then we'll do a 10 by 13. So with our 1.5 factor, we're going to come up with quick centimeter dimensions for these rug sizes, and that's what we'll cut out with our paper. Of course, we can do a lot of this in our head, but, well, the 10 I will not insult ourselves on that one, right? So we need a 12 centimeter by 15 centimeter piece of paper for the 8 by 10. That's 18. 13.5 by 18 for the 9 by 12. And then a 15 by 19.5 for the 10 by 13 rug. All right, simple enough. We'll set this off to the side so that I can see it, and that's where the numbers will be coming from as we go forward. All right, let's do the 8 by 10 first. What color do we want the 8 by 10 to be? Let's see. Let's just do pink for the 8 by 10. I get kind of a nostalgic feeling about manipulating paper and scissors in this way. It reminds me of kids' play to a great degree, but it's fun to see how you can apply this very simple kind of modeling to, real world questions. So we need a 12 by 15 centimeter so we'll just use this corner here as our starting point. 12 by 15. Let's do the 15 dimension this way. We'll do the 12 this way. So we have a mark there and a mark there. We'll transfer these very quickly. Really like this grid for this purpose. I don't even have to rotate the paper. I can transfer this one like this. Very slick. Put a line there. We'll put a line there. Now, this is the corner that we measured, so that we don't get confused by this pattern. We'll go ahead and write 8 by 10 right there so that we know that this is the corner that we want cut out. What are the stories about surgeons marking, the right arm or the right leg or the correct limb to operate on, so it doesn't get confused in the surgery. Same thing here. Okay, that was easy enough. That's our 8 by 10 rug right there. We'll put him up here. So how about green? Let's go to the other extreme for this one, and we'll make green our 10 by 13 rug, okay? So that one needs to be 15 by 19 and a half centimeters. So here's our 15. By 19 and a half. And we're gonna go ahead and mark this corner before we even draw the lines. Let's see, 15 by 19 and a half. So that means this zone is our 10 by 13 rug. This mat has a lot of areas that have been cut into it. It's actually a sewing mat used for cutting fabric, and it's got a lot of things that are hanging up the paper because they've got little raised edges from being kind of sliced into over the years. But we will endeavor to persevere. Okay. This is going along quite quickly. I hope you guys are enjoying the measuring, the work with the straight edge, and the cutting. Little projects like this actually can be very relaxing. If you've got a lot going on and you're feeling a little overwhelmed by life or priorities, if you've got one of those brains that sometimes can't settle down and wants to treat everything that's on your mind as the most important thing, so that you get overwhelmed thinking that you don't know where to start. Sometimes I think the single-mindedness of just focusing on a simple task like this can really put the mind at ease for a little while, because it gets the luxury of being able to just focus on one thing at a time for a change. We don't allow ourselves and I do call it a luxury. I think it is a luxury. We don't allow ourselves that luxury often enough in this busy world. But sometimes it's okay. It's okay to put everything else on hold for a few minutes and just focus on one simple task. Frankly, I think that's sometimes why mowing the lawn can feel somewhat mentally therapeutic, because for that hour or hour and a half, all I have to think about is straight lines. Very simple. Just make the line straight. Everything else can wait. So here is our 10 by 13 rug. And here's what it looks like compared to the 8 by 10 rug. But we're not going to bring the room out quite yet. We're going to save that to the end. Okay. One more piece. Blue. Let's do blue for the 9 by 12. We've got our blue Ticonderoga. This light blue on the pencil is nearly the same color as the construction paper. Blue on blue. All right, for this one, our last one, on a 13.5 by 18 centimeters. So let's go 18 here along our long direction. 18 right there. And we'll do 13.5. On the short direction. So that means this corner, 9 by 12. Okay. This one little slice right here is where I keep wanting to put the paper to transfer these dots, and it keeps getting hung up. Endeavor to persevere. I think I used that in a video a long time ago. It's from a movie. Anybody remember that line? Endeavor to persevere. Okay. This is our last rug. Okay, let's see. Love these scissors. All right. There's the 9 by 12. And there's our 3 rug sizes. So, let's bring back our room. Let's see. Again, it's almost like a square, but this is the long direction. This is actually the north-south in our home, and this is the short direction, the east-west. So let's take a look first at the 8 by 10. So this is the smallest standard choice. And we know this is a little bit small given the 36-inch guidance on dining room tables, but that same guidance says that you shouldn't go less than 24 inches. So an 8 by 10 could be a possibility if it was one we really liked, I suppose. But we can see that in its regular orientation, if it's oriented along the same lines as the room, that it does not encroach the 2-foot zone at all. It leaves plenty of room, and you can even put the dining room table in at an angle if we wanted. And you'd have to go at a pretty steep angle before your corners started getting into that zone. And that's not a deal breaker, of course, because if you had a china cabinet and there was only one best place that it could go and it was right here, you can have the legs straddle the corner if you were going at such a steep angle. So that's not a problem. So that's what the 8x10 looks like in the room. Okay, fair enough. Now here's our middle size. Here's the 9x12. Now we can see that in the regular orientation, it does get into our 2-foot zone probably by about 6 inches from the looks of it. If this is 2 feet, then that's 1 foot, and yeah, it's probably a half a foot in the north-south direction, and probably 3 feet exposed on the east-west direction. I would not say this overwhelms the room by any means. And if you do any sort of angled type of an affair, you can see that the encroachment on the north and south gets a lot bigger, a lot quicker. I would say this is a full 1 foot. Here, let's center it up. Yeah, these corners clearly come into the zone by about half of the space. But this is the closest standard size to being the right size for the dining room table if you believe the 36-inch rule. So that's the 9x12. And then here's the 10x13. This was that size that was the only larger size available in that one rug I was talking about. So we can see here that even in the just regular straight direction, this gets to within a foot of the edges of the room on the north-south. And I really think that starts causing a concern, particularly for the north wall here. This is the accent wall of the house, or of the room. And there was going to be the big bookcase with lots of books and games would be on this wall. And that's probably a good 18 inches deep or more. So I think having a rug coming this close to the north and south walls without even angling it, well, that's angling, you could get I can get the corners of the rug to touch the opposite walls of the room in this size. That's pretty big. So this is what I was talking about, being a visual learner. It's so much easier to answer the questions that I had about proportionality with just a couple of simple pieces of paper. Now I get it. Now I can see that 10x13 is probably no bueno for us. What if I go back to the 9x12 and think about that bookcase in particular? Even with the 9x12, I'd want to pay attention to that, right? Because this probably eats about 6 inches of the 2 feet here. course, with just a small bit of angling, depending on how wide the bookcase was and what the base was like, or whether it was on feet or whatever, even just a little angle frees up, more space on this side. If it was a modular kind of maybe 3 sections and they had feet, could probably, the rug would probably be well out of its way. And then, of course, there's always the option of actually placing the rug slightly off-center. But I guess you could put the rug perpendicular to the long dimension of the room. Since the room is so square, it almost doesn't matter. And that would open it up like that and open up all of this bookcase space over here to the north. I did one little practice cut before I started the video, which was a piece to approximate the size and shape of the dining room table, which doesn't look very good because I had to freehand these, the ends, the semicircular ends. I just kind of cut those out quick and dirty freehand, but this is what the table would look like in the middle of the 9x12 rug. And you can see the, roughly 3 feet on all sides. So these would be our 3 elements: the room, rug, and a table. Since we have the table, let's look at the table on top of the 8x10 for a moment. I think with a dining room table and chair legs, I think you want to err to the conservative side, right? I mean, in this situation, it looks like the 2 chairs at the head of the table probably have the least amount of space behind them. And the last thing you want is to be self-conscious about how far you push the chair back to get out of it when leaving the table, because you're worried about the back legs slipping off the edge of the rug and hitting the hardwood. And you couldn't put felt or anything like that on the bottom of the chair legs because they're being scooted around all the time and they would eventually come off. Now, our construction paper exercise today is telling me that I think the middle ground here, the middle choice, our 9x12 rug, might be the way to go. Have you guys ever experimented with an angular dining room table placement? Or do you just simply go always with one of the axes of the room? We've done it both ways. Same thing with a bed in a bedroom. Sometimes it's fun to have the bed at an angle, mixes up the geometry of the room a little bit. If you guys have any suggestions about that kind of sizing and placement, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Well, I think I've learned what I came here to learn today, and hopefully, in addition to that, we've been able to spend some time on a simple, single-minded task, which I think can be very helpful and very healthy. And I invite you to do the same sometime when you're feeling overwhelmed and you've got 1,000 things competing for your attention. Maybe carve out 15 minutes of your day and pick something small and simple. Maybe something manual like this, something that involves your hands. Make a paper airplane, right? Or make 3 of them. Just spend 15 minutes focused on one thing for a change and see if it doesn't give your brain just a little bit of a recharge. You might find it beneficial. I know I do. Thanks so much for joining me with this little craft project, visualization, modeling experiment today. And I hope you found it relaxing or diverting. And I'm looking very much forward to seeing you next time. See you later. Bye-bye.